Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
What are we talking about today?
Hi, James. Well, today we're going to talk about one of your favourite subjects,
All right, what's that then?
performance management.
Yes.
Let's hold that thought. But the reason why we're talking about it is organisations talk about the importance of performance, and then they just build systems that make improving performance almost impossible. You have ratings that are all political. Feedback's all about justifying a poor rating. You have these validation or calibration sessions that are just like gladiatorial battles.
Make you want to scoop your eyeballs out with a teaspoon.
Anyhow, overall, the system takes over and the actual job, helping people do better work, helping people improve performance, gets completely lost. So we were challenged by one of our audience to say, all right, well, I think
Easy to
we
bash
did an
it.
article on it. Easy to bash it. Tell us what you'd do then. So today we're going to do two things because we thought that was a fair question. We're going to say, what would we do with a blank piece of paper if we had free rein to change performance management systems? And secondly, just as important, because most people don't have that luxury, we are going to talk about if you don't own the system,
What would you
how
do?
you actually manage. Yeah, what would you do? How you manage your people inside that system. So
Yeah.
there you go.
All right. Looking forward to it. Now, the trick for me is to not start frothing at the mouth, particularly as this is a video. I look like a rabid dog. You'll be able to see it,
Don't.
can't you?
Don't worry, I'll edit it out,
Thank
James,
you.
when you start ranting.
So go on now. Why do performance management systems frustrate everybody? What would you say to that as a question?
Well, I think they are designed from an organisational perspective. So they are designed to cover off a whole load of bases about how people manage performance and how you get consistency and. They're done from the organisation and systems perspective, not the individual. So I think
Yeah. But sorry to pile in, but that's what really surprises me. So these things, and I promise I will not bash HR too much in this podcast, but they come out of HR. So you'd think they would understand people, but they don't. They have a very sort of process bent to them, and the human seems to be ignored in the whole process.
They do, but without going down too much of a rabbit hole here, I think therein lies one of the problems, is you allow leaders in organisations, allow HR teams to go off and design stuff and own stuff, and they own the culture and they own performance management and they own the people. That's wrong. Fundamentally, the organisation owns it and the people and the leaders should own it. And so you're right, but we abdicate responsibility to the wrong people.
And so the other question for me is, why do they always don't often seem to create worse behaviour? So performance seems to get worse off the back of these systems than better. So I think that's something we should talk about a wee bit.
It is, and one of my favourite examples of that is that you have this rating in the middle, don't you? And in some organisations it's called good,
Yes.
or I've heard it called good or strong.
Everybody takes it to me average.
Yeah, but it takes some effort to make being called good into a negative, doesn't it?
It does.
You're a strong performer, James, and you hate it.
That should be very strong.
That's flawed. And I think then they become more and more bureaucratic and trying to control behaviours. And one of the pet things, we've both done this many times, one of the pet things I find is that it's easier to pay somebody off, write a check, pay off somebody who's not performing well, than it is to manage their performance fairly and accurately through a process. And that's the reality in most organisations. So rather than waste years of your life trying to manage poor performance, you just write a check.
And then the other thing is, it just seems to be a sort of once every 6 months or once a year exercise in seeing if you can piss off everybody in the organisation in one fell swoop.
Yeah. And you give some people a really high rating and they're happy for about 10 minutes. And then everyone else who didn't get the high rating, which is 95% of your people, are pissed off for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'm worried why we've got a motivation problem.
So why do you think that performance management systems are ineffective, James?
So I would argue that you're going to like this is good law of logic. There are two parts to any organisation. You've got the people and the system. The system being everything that's not the people. So far, this is flawless, right?
That's very simple.
I
very
like
simple.
it. I like it with this simple logic. Performance management is all about trying to improve the people. So it's all about goals and incentives and, we must have the best people and yada, 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 yada. And frankly, it's just lazy management because unless you are, Manchester United and you can afford to pay for the best people, everybody wants the best people. You've got, living in Nottingham, as we do, there are 2 or 3 big corporates here. It's just a roundabout of people going from one to the next to the next. So if you think it is going to get you the best people, you are sadly mistaken. So there's my first problem with it, just lazy thinking. The second thing is that it's an employee's interest to look good, but that's the same as being good. So you get this whole thing about, performance is subjective. Well, what are you measuring? Well, you show me what you're measuring and I'll show you how to behave. And we all know stories about people cheating on their targets and finding workarounds. Yeah. The other thing is it just kills cooperation between people. So you just, drive sub-optimization. So that, focusing on people, I think, is the wrong thing. And
sorry, James, just on that, you can look good and be good. It's just the challenge is it's easier to not worry about being good and just look good.
Yes.
And that's therein lies the problem. You don't have to do all the hard work to be a top performer. You just need to be able to look good.
Well, and to be honest, you're right. But if everybody else is cheating, it takes a big man not to cheat.
Yeah.
And then, so the other thing is the thing about the best people, right? There are organisations, so McDonald's, for example, I shouldn't really pick on McDonald's, but McDonald's never, ever claims to have the best people. I've never seen, come and work for our high-performing team at McDonald's advertised. But they make a shed load of money, which comes back to my point about the system. If you focus on the system, you stand a much greater chance of improving performance, and you can lock it in, because even if you did have the best people, they'll always leave. So I just think the whole thing is the tail wagging the dog, right? The power is in the system. I think we worry about people far too much.
I think you're right on that McDonald's point, though, because they don't have the best people, but their food's okay. You know what I mean? They've got to a standard, and it's always consistently at that standard.
It gives the customer what they want.
They maintain that standard absolutely immaculately wherever you go in the world. That's what you get.
So the system, I would argue.
Yeah, I'm very impressed, James, by your level of maturity that you've talked about the negative side of performance management without absolutely losing your shit. But the reality is you do need to do something. And so we can say how much we hate it, but the thing is, organisations do need to have some way of consistently managing their people and attempting to get better performance out of them. Bias does exist, and so you need to find ways of managing consistently and getting bias out of how your people are managing at times. And particularly when you're in a big organisation and you're trying to do that at scale, it's all very well if you and I are running a little tiny organisation and we can see everyone and we can watch everything, you can manage it in a certain way. When you've got 10,000 people, how do you know consistently that performance is being managed effectively and fairly?
But see that point though, so I agree, you do need to do something. But what is it that you actually need to do? So, what would you argue actually improves performance?
So I think there are certain things that I've seen that improve performance. Things like just having regular, honest conversations with someone
Feedback's
about
always
how
a
they're
good thing.
performing.
Totally agree.
Yeah, but being really specific about the feedback. Not, you done really well last week, James. It's when you did this, that was really impressive.
Yeah.
It's been really specific. So frequent conversations with specifics, clarity on what people are here for. We talk a lot about purpose, but being clear, whether that's organizational level, at team level, are you clear with what good looks like for your people? What are the priorities? Why are we here? And what are the trade-offs we're willing to make? Often, in all of those things, we leave an amount of ambiguity. So people are not clear what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I agree.
have an environment where stuff can go wrong for a start off.
And then get on it
And
really
then-
quick.
Exactly. Pivot quickly. Don't just carry on flogging the same projects, the same dead horses. And I think back to the encouraging people to make mistakes, is your culture one where people feel psychologically safe, where they feel comfortable to admit problems and not ignore them and bury them and pretend they're not happening. And they can take accountability for things without fear of the consequence.
Retribution.
Yeah.
That one's really powerful, right? If you can't admit you've got a problem, you're never going to get any better.
Yeah. And got to have the capability, the manager's capability, that matters, in many ways more than a process. So a good manager can outperform a poor system when it comes to having performance conversations. So how do you make sure that capability is there? And where you can separate the punishment and the development, because I went through most of my career thinking that coaching was a remedial thing. You got coached because you weren't very good. And now I realise, actually, you coach people in elite sports are coached. You're coached to improve, not for punishment.
Yeah, okay. But I've counted these wrong. You've got about 6 themes there which are saying improve performance, right?
Yeah,
So
I
you've
think
got
so.
what? Honest conversations, frequent honest conversations. You've got really clear, getting on top of things quickly, so fast course correction, psychological safety, managers having the conversations and actually focusing on coaching as a good thing rather than a remedial thing. So I would agree with all of that. The problem I have is that when you look at, and it depends on the organisation you work in, but a lot of these big corporates, they have these, 10% rank stacking and you're going to whip people out. You've got individual bonuses, you've got annual reviews, you've got vitality curves, you've got cross-calibration, all of that crap. And actually that has got nothing whatsoever to do with those 6 things that we've talked about. So,
That's true.
Yeah, so I think the process that organizations go through, and interestingly, the process which many will tell you is best practice, just does not achieve those outcomes that you've just talked about.
That's very true. So let's tackle the challenge then, James. What would we actually do if we had a blank piece of paper and we were there to improve performance and manage performance?
Okay, so I think it's probably, we've got different cards on this one, right? So you're a man who's actually done this. So in an organization, you took it out. Yeah. And I'm obviously Mr. Process and System, so I'll go at it quite systematically. So as a man who has actually done it, what did you do? What happened? And what did you learn from it?
So a bit of background, I worked in one organization and myself and the chief people officer, we were very aligned in our attitudes towards performance management. So we worked together and figured a way of removing a lot of the old-fashioned performance management processes. And we had some successes. Not everything worked perfectly. And that's one of the key things is one of the mantras we picked up was progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
So don't try and design the perfect solution before you start to try stuff out. So some of the things that we found worked well is having a loop between hiring and performance. So once you've recruited someone, the people who've done the recruitment, push them out into the business. You don't really look back and say, are the recruitment methods I'm following actually being successful? So when you get a high performer, how did you get them? Where did you get them from? What was the source? What was the process that was followed to identify them? So that loop is
it's
important.
that feedback loop, so you know whether what it works or not.
Yeah. The second bit was incentivizing the overall. So we incentivized on how the organization was performing, not the individual. And that's how bonuses were paid. And funny enough, all of a sudden, everyone got very interested in how the organization was performing. Whereas before, they were all bothered about their little bits and what they were doing. And they're pretty indifferent to the overall. That completely transformed when we changed how people were incentivized.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you're getting away from the sub-optimization. Some idiot worrying about their handles and whatever the hell it might be, which is totally irrelevant.
And the other thing that linked into that was making sure that people thought about how they were impacting the outcomes. And it's a bit of a cliche, but we talked about you're either serving the customer or you're serving someone who is serving the customer. So just think, it doesn't matter what job you're doing, but just having line of sight between what you do and what the end result is that you're trying to get for the organization. Other couple of things, I think, one was really focusing on the capability that your managers have. They really do need to be invested in to have the right conversations. It is not as straightforward as we may all think to really have regular performance conversations in a way that's motivational for people. So have you invested in that capability? That's not about, a whole load of structure and processes and guidelines and forms that stop you from thinking. That's just about the ability to have that conversation.
And that comes back to our, what we've spoken about, the don't be moving effect. If you tell people they're good, they'll be good. Whereas if you keep telling people they'll be bad, they're bad. So where is the emphasis of that conversation going? Are you picking on the good stuff or the bad stuff?
Accepting that in any organization, there will be good and bad stuff. And you have to have an environment that nurtures imperfection, because that's the real world. And as soon as your environment or your culture is not accepting of imperfection, that's it, you're gone, because people will then focus on just telling the spun out story rather than the reality. So there's some of the things that worked for us. Did
it actually work? And what was the outcome? Did it improve the performance of the business?
The organization performed well. And so it wasn't without challenges. And that's the reality, is any system approach, whatever you want to call it, it's going to have some downsides. So you just have to keep, to your point previously, keep looking at them and improving and improving.
And what happened in the end then?
Well, interesting enough, James, it did work well, but I left the organisation, as did my colleague in HR, and I doubt it had the support from above. And I did hear on the grapevine that they had changed things back again.
Yeah, there is a little bit of it's a crutch. Everybody else does it, therefore we should do it.
It takes a bit of bravery to say, no, I'm not going to carry on flogging the dead horse, which is what some people are more comfortable doing.
And so I'm a little bit more, I'm a wee bit more analytical about this, right? So how would I actually go about doing it? So the first thing, I think, the first problem with a lot of performance management systems is they try to do everything in one go, right? You've got, we want to make pay decisions on it. We want to do development conversations on it.
Yeah.
We want to promote people on it. We want to get rid of people on it, right? So you've just ended up with this huge unwieldy beast of a thing. So the first question, I think, is to be very clear about what all the outcomes you want are and just write them down, right? Because then when you've written those down, you can start to challenge, is that what I'm getting? And I really would urge people to get some data. If you can get, data, employee satisfaction, whatever the hell it might be, and see if it's actually working for you so much the good. If you can't get data, just have some focus groups, but get some real feedback on how well this process is working for you. And is it actually improving the performance of your business? If it's not, don't do it, right? Then you're into split your processes up, right? Because you've got so many things going on. It's all linked together. It's just unwieldy. So if you want a development process, have a development process. If you want a pay process, have a pay process. Yeah. If you want to roll out your strategic objectives, if you're objective setting process, have one of those. But the problem is you've got this huge sort of Swiss Army knife of a process. So really what you want is a bunch of scalpels. So split it up so then it's much easier and less unwieldy. And then one by one, I just go through and redesign it. It's the classic, post-it notes on the wall. What do I do now? Does it work? Do I like it? Don't I like it? What am I going to do differently? But then the most important thing is to test it. So roll it out, see if it works or not. And then don't get suckered into this whole thing about best practice, because best practice only works for an individual organization. No two organizations are the same. So the best practice isn't the same. And then finally, after you've tested it, run it for a year, see if it works, and have another go. Because a lot of these things, people stake their reputation on it, but redesign and redesign and redesign. There's a reason why I think, what are they on to? They're on 17 now, are they? Something like that?
Something like that.
But they just keep on improving it. So keep on improving your process. Don't stick with what you've got. So that is what I would do. But that links really strongly to what you've said.
Yeah, just to pick up on a couple of points there, James, I think your point around you're trying to create the Swiss Army knife of processes that are going to solve all these problems. The reality is they can't. And therefore, the reality is in this one size fits no one.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, as I said, progress, not perfection. Keep trying to change and evolve what you're doing. Because if you wait for there to be the perfect universal answer, it doesn't exist. So you'll be waiting a long fucking time.
Yeah. No, but the problem is, it's all very easy to talk about this, right? However, in my experience, so my last job, I was a reasonably senior manager in an organisation. I've got these performance management shoved down me throughout. And so I said to the HR lady, I said, well, how about we run a test and we try something else? And I just got a flat no. Right? You are doing this whether you like it or not, James. So the question for me is, if you're having this rant down your throat and you have no choice, what's the best way to do it? What would you do?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, James, because 99% of people listening to this can't influence the process that they had. So I think if you're stuck within this, I think there are things that you can do. I need to go back a little bit to some of the things that drive good performance that we talked about. Don't wait for the formal cycle. Have regular conversations with your team about how they're doing, not just how the work's going, how are they doing? How are they improving? What are they struggling with? How they're developing? But do it on a regular basis. Don't wait for the annual cycle to force you to do that. That might means that you're effectively removing surprises. So when you're sitting down talking to someone about their end of year review, nothing in that should be a surprise. If you ever write down a review or write down your prep notes and you think to yourself, these are words that James will not have heard from me before, that's when you know you've got a problem. I think sometimes you have to just translate some of the corporate language into normal language. I mean, there's a whole lexicon of stuff where you talk about,
I've got stakeholder management opportunities.
Yes, or it's good for your development, which means I'm just about to shaft you with some crap.
So steer away from those. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, just talk straight to people. Be honest about things. I think the other thing is also a lot of performance management happen in waves. So you're asked for 360 feedback at one point in the year. Keep some notes through the year because you just won't remember everything. We get hit by recency bias. And so I can remember what you did in the month before. That's what I put down as the examples of the feedback and keep notes on things.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. But to that point, there always seem to be a lot of people presenting and doing stuff in the last month of the year. Do you remember?
There was, as everyone tries to get the objectives.
Absolutely.
The other thing I found, James, in one organisation that I worked in. First, I was in a reasonably important position, but first year, I got a load of feedback requests, and it's a bit like doing the washing up. If you do it really well, you keep getting asked to do it. So I give lots of really good feedback, really specific, really good quality. And I realised that next year I've got even more requests. You get a reputation for, you're important, you're helpful, you give good feedback. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
That way lies madness.
So keep your own evidence and avoid the whole recency bias thing. Yeah, what else?
Reward honesty. If some of your team talk to you about problems and stuff that goes wrong, then treat that as a positive rather than that's going to be on the negative side of the checklist when it comes to year end. Talk about their openness, their curiosity, their desire to improve, their innovation rather than they made a mistake.
Yeah.
I think you have to get your head right as well in this. Approach it with the right mindset. Don't just become cynical. I mean, we both have been cynical at certain points in our...
I've never been cynical my entire career.
You have been cynical your entire career about performance management. But the point is, if you get really cynical and pissed off about it, the only person that impacts is you and your ability to do your job. You're not going to change the system, so just find ways of thinking as positively as you can about it without it impacting you too much. People become really entitled to their performance. So, I get a very good rating or whatever it is. Next year, turn up and do the same again. I'm going to get another very good rating. And that's what my right is every year. You have those people, don't you? Every year they get that top rating.
Yeah.
Make sure people have to earn it, because if it becomes their entitlement, they stop performing. And then your results go down. You're wondering why. Well, you've got a load of top performers that are no longer performing.
Yeah, go on.
there are a couple other things. Think about showing your appreciation for people outside of performance management.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely. A simple thank you will work wonders. Yeah, totally agree with that.
It absolutely can do. The bar for good performance isn't always perfection. So quite often, in hindsight, I've seen your performance. I know now what perfect would have been. And I apply that hindsight lens to your performance and say, if you did that, that would have been great. Yeah, you're not perfect. And you didn't know that at the outset. And I think ultimately, when you come down and you have the discussion with your team members, I think you do have to, in the nicest possible way, own the message. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but if you're sitting there going, well, I thought you were very good, but they all made me give you a good rating, that is not going to be motivational for that person at all. There's a bit of short-term pain for long-term gain in some of that. So I think there are some practical things that you can do working within a system. What about you, James?
Well, listen, I think there's good Jimmy and bad James on this one, right? So
as ever,
that's very politically correct. My honest view is it's toxic, right? It's absolute bollocks. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to make a decision, right? Am I going to stick with this job or not? Second thing is, if you decided you're going to stick with it, then you've got to suck it up. So find ways to make it work for you. And then if it's the full-on 10% rack stack, the whole 9 yards of it, if you've got 100 people working for you, you are going to tell 10 people they are useless at the end of the year. You've got no choice about it, right? So I'm full on for finding ways to cheat the system. So everybody who leaves, make sure that you dropped a word in HR's ear about how bad they were before they left, just so you can give them the boot after the event. Yeah. Everybody gets promoted, but they're below standard, aren't they? Because they've just been promoted. But there are ways to circumvent the system. Everybody else is cheating. It creates cheating. If you're going to stay, you might as well go with it. So there you go. That is my rather jaundiced view of it. I could write a book, couldn't I? Ways to cheat at performance management. It could be an Amazon management bestseller.
I think both are legitimate. I mean, I don't think my advice was necessarily politically correct. It was more pragmatic versus, actually, I agree. If you have to work in that system, then finding ways to circumvent it is perfectly legitimate. And we've both done it at various times and to various degrees. I mean, I remember one of the experiences we had, just the presenting of your people's performance. Observe what works. Yeah. Learn what works.
Write your notes.
Practice. Yeah. Write your notes and practice how you're going to deliver it. Even something straightforward like that can make a difference between getting one rating and getting another. And it shouldn't be that way, but the reality is. So just get good, in that example, at delivering the message to whatever senior group you have to deliver to. That's not about cheating the system. That's playing the system at the end of the day. It's what smart people do, James.
Right, play the system. Anyway, so let's summarize that then. So we talked about two things then, right? If you can change the system, these are the things we should be doing or thinking about. And if you can't, these are the ways to, play the system rather than cheat it.
Yeah. And you got to be realistic about it. People don't go into their end of the year performance review and think, this was a great growing experience for me. Wasn't it wonderful? Just be realistic. They do form an opinion of you, and you want to make sure that opinion of you is personal to you rather than letting the system influence how people think about you.
And then I think the other thing that's really important, we talked about it towards the start, well, there are things which do improve performance, free from conversations, clarity, all of that good stuff. That's really important. Your HR system probably does not mandate that. But those are the things you should be doing during the year because, frankly, people will realise you're not a bad boss if you're doing those things and you just have to work within the system that's there.
So hopefully we've answered both questions, which was, with a blank piece of paper, what would you do? And if you haven't got a blank piece of paper and you have to work within a system, there are some ways you can find to play the system a little bit.
Yeah. Super. Not frosted yet. Are we all right?
You've done well, James. You have grown as a person.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well done.
Pleasure talking to you. I'll speak to you next week.
All right, speak soon.
Sure.
Cheers.
We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast, from purpose to corporate jargon, but always focused on one thing, getting the job done well. Easier said than done. So if you've got unhappy customers or employees,
Bosses or regulators breathing down your neck?
If your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiralling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
We can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organisation's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com.
or James@jobdonewell.com.